The stars had always seemed peaceful to the people of Elysium 7. This small world sat at the edge of human space, far from the busy trade routes and crowded cities of Earth. Here, families grew crops in fields of purple flowers. Children played under silver trees that sang when the wind blew through their metal leaves. It was a quiet place, a safe place, or so everyone believed. Commander Lyra Chen was 3 days away from Elysium 7. When her ship picked up the first distress signal, the message was broken and filled with static. She could only hear fragments. Words like attack and burning and please help us came through before the signal died completely. She ordered her crew to push the engines harder. The patrol frigate Stalwart was not a large ship. It carried only 200 soldiers and a handful of weapons. But Lyra had sworn an oath to protect human colonies, and she would not break that oath now. When she arrived at Elysium, she found nothing but silence. The planet that had once been green and purple was now black and gray. Great scars covered the surface where weapons had burned away everything. The atmosphere was thick with ash. Lyra stood at the viewing window and felt her heart break into pieces. She had visited this world 2 years ago. She had eaten dinner with a farming family. She had watched their children chase each other through the fields. Now those fields were gone. Those children were gone. Everything was gone. Her communications officer spoke in a shaking voice. He had found 847 survivors. They had escaped on small transport ships just before the attack reached their cities. 847 people out of 2,300,000. That was all that remained of Elysium-7. The survivors told her what had happened. Ships had appeared without warning. Massive vessels covered in dark armor, shaped like insects with sharp edges and glowing red eyes. The Vethkai Dominion had come to Elysium 7, and they had shown no mercy. Lyra had heard of the Vethkai before. Every human had. They were an ancient empire of insect-like creatures who had conquered 17 other species across the galaxy. They kept slaves. They destroyed worlds. They believed that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. The Galactic Concordat, council of 12 powerful alien races, had always told humanity to avoid the Vethkai. Pay tribute, they said. Show respect. Do not give them a reason to notice you. Humanity had tried to follow this advice. They had kept their military small. They had focused on trade and farming and building peaceful colonies. They had hoped that if they were quiet enough, the Vethkai would leave them alone. They had hoped wrong. Lyra sent her report to Earth. With all the information she had gathered, she included images of the burned planet. She included recordings from the survivors describing the attack. She included the death count. That terrible number that she knew would echo through human history forever. Then she waited, on Earth. Admiral Marcus Cole received the report in his office. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 40 years building humanity's small fleet, always hoping it would never need to fight a real war. He had believed in peace. He had taught his officers that violence was the last option, never the first. He opened the files from Elysium 7. He saw the images of destruction. He read the names of the dead. And then he stopped, breathing. His daughter had lived on. Elysium 7. She had moved there with her husband and 2 children 5 years ago because she wanted her kids to grow up somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. Marcus had visited them last summer. He had taught his grandson how to fish in the Silver Rivers. He searched the survivor list. His daughter's name was not there. His son-in-law's name was not there. His grandchildren's names were not there. For a long moment, Admiral Marcus Cole sat alone in the darkness of his office. No one knew what he thought during those silent minutes. No one would ever ask. When he finally moved, he pressed a button on his desk. His voice was calm and steady, showing no sign of the storm that raged inside him. "Give me every flag officer in the fleet," he said. "Emergency priority. We meet in 1 hour." The news spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Every world, every station, every ship received word of what had happened to Elysium 7. People gathered in public squares to watch the images on giant screens. They saw their fellow humans running from burning cities. They heard the screams of families being torn apart, and something changed inside humanity that day. For 300 years, humans had tried to be good neighbors in the galaxy. They had followed the rules. They had shown respect to the elder races. They had accepted their place as newcomers, as children among ancient civilizations. But children grow up, and sometimes they grow up fast. The Galactic Concordat sent a message to Earth. The 12 elder races expressed their concern. Over the events at Elysium 7, however, they explained the Vethkai Dominion had legal rights under Article 7 of the Galactic Charter. This article allowed powerful species to claim tribute from weaker ones. Humanity should have negotiated. Humanity should have offered payment. Humanity should have known their place. The Concordat cannot intervene in matters of established conquest rights, the message concluded. We advise humanity to seek diplomatic solutions. Admiral Cole read this message in front of his officers. When he finished, the room was completely silent. Every face showed the same expression: shock, anger, disgust. One young officer finally spoke. "Sir, what do we do now?" Cole looked at the blank screen where the Concordat's message had appeared. He thought about his daughter's smile. He thought about his grandson's laughter. He thought about 2,300,000 people who had done nothing wrong except exist in a galaxy that saw them as prey. Do what humans have always done when someone hurts our family, he said quietly. We make sure they never do it again. He turned to face his officers. These men and women had trained for years, hoping for peace, but preparing for war. Now war had found them. The galaxy thinks we are weak, Cole continued. They think we are children who will cry and beg for help. They think we will accept this and move on. He paused. They are wrong. He pressed another button on his console. Around him, holographic displays activated. They showed ship designs, fleet positions, and weapon systems that no one outside this room knew existed. 20 years ago, we began a secret project. We called it the Black Armada. 2,000 warships hidden across human space, waiting for the day someone made the mistake of attacking our people. His officers stared at the displays in amazement. They had never known. No one had known? Today, Admiral Cole said, we wake the giant. And somewhere in the darkness of space, 2,000 ships began to power their engines. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. It had confused human kindness for human weakness. It would not make that mistake again. The United Earth Parliament had not met in emergency session for over 100 years. The last time had been during a great plague that swept through the inner colonies. That crisis had taken 6 months to resolve. This one would take 6 hours. Representatives from every human world arrived through holographic links. Their faces appeared in the great chamber, row after row of angry eyes and tight lips. No one needed to explain why they were here. Everyone already knew. The speaker opened the session with a simple question. What shall humanity do? For the first time in living memory, there was no debate. There was no argument between political parties. There was no discussion about costs or risks or diplomatic consequences. One by one, representatives stood and spoke the same word: war. The vote was unanimous. Every human world, every colony, every station agreed. The Cole Doctrine passed into law before midnight. Its words were simple and clear. Any attack on human civilians would be met with complete response. There would be no negotiation. There would be no mercy. There would be only consequence. Across the galaxy, the Vethkai Dominion received intelligence reports about humanity's reaction. The Supreme Overmind, a massive creature that ruled all Vethkai from its throne of living metal, studied the information with mild interest. The prey animals are angry, it observed to its advisors. How amusing. The advisors agreed. Their analysts had calculated human military strength at roughly 400 combat ships. The Dominion commanded 15,000 vessels, each one larger and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. More importantly, the Vethkai had been fighting wars for 3,000 years. They had conquered 17 species. They knew how to break the will of lesser creatures. Should we prepare additional forces? One advisor asked. The overmind made a sound like grinding stones. This was Vethkai laughter. No, let them come. Let them throw their tiny ships against our walls. When they fail, when they see how hopeless their situation is, they will surrender. And then we will have slaves to replace the ones we lost at Elysium 7. The advisors clicked their approval. The wisdom of the overmind was beyond question. Humanity would learn its place soon enough, but the Vethkai had made a critical error. They had counted the ships they could see. They had not counted the ships they could not see. On Earth, Admiral Cole stood in the command center of the Black Armada project. Around him, screens showed the location of every hidden vessel. 2,000 warships scattered across human space like seeds waiting to grow. They had been built in secret shipyards, deep inside asteroids, and hidden in the atmospheres of gas giants. Their crews had trained for years, preparing for a war everyone hoped would never come. Now that war had arrived, Cole addressed his commanders through secure channels. You know what happened at Elysium 7? You know what the enemy did to our people? Some of you lost family there. Some of you lost friends. He paused to let his words sink in. The galaxy thinks we will mourn and move on. They think we will accept our losses and return to being quiet, peaceful farmers. His voice grew harder. We will show them what humans do when someone attacks our home. We will show them that our kindness is a choice, not a weakness. And we will make sure that no one ever makes this mistake again. The commanders responded with fierce determination. Ships began moving from their hiding places. Engines that had sat cold for years roared back to life. The Black Armada was waking up, but weapons alone would not win this war. Cole knew that the Vethkai were powerful. Even with 2,000 ships, humanity would be outnumbered. They needed something more. They needed to fight smart. Dr. Yuki Tanaka arrived at the command center carrying a small data chip. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. For 20 years, she had studied the Vethkai. She knew their biology, their society, their psychology. She knew how they thought and how they feared. Admiral, she said, placing the chip on his desk. I have something for you. Cole picked up the chip and inserted it into his display. Information flooded the screen. Biological data, social structures, communication patterns, and weaknesses. So many weaknesses. The Vethkai operated through a hive structure. Their society depended on 12 queen worlds, each one hosting a breeding queen that produced millions of soldiers. Without the queens, the Vethkai could not reproduce. Without reproduction, their empire would collapse within a generation. More importantly, Tanaka had discovered how Vethkai communicated. They used pheromones, chemical signals that passed between individuals and coordinated group behavior. If those pheromone signals were disrupted, Vethkai soldiers became confused and disorganized. Their perfect coordination would fall apart. We don't need to destroy their fleet, Tanaka explained. We need to destroy their ability to function as a society. Strike the queens. Disrupt their communications. Turn their greatest strengths into weaknesses. Cole studied the data for a long time. His military training told him that this plan was risky. It required precision strikes deep into enemy territory. It required speed and coordination that humans had never attempted before. But his heart told him something else. It told him that this was the only way to truly win. Not just to defeat the Vethkai, but to break them so completely that they would never threaten humanity again. How long will you need to prepare the weapons? He asked it. Tanaka smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I started preparing them 10 years ago, Admiral. I always knew this day would come. Cole nodded slowly. Then we begin immediately. Word of humanity's preparations reached the Galactic Concordat. The elder races watched with growing unease. They had expected humans to send angry messages and make empty threats. They had expected negotiations and diplomatic protests. They had not expected silence. The humans were not talking. They were not complaining. They were not begging for help. They were simply ... preparing. And that silence was more frightening than any amount of shouting. The architects, the oldest and wisest of the elder races, called a private meeting. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. They recognized patterns that younger species could not see. "The humans are not behaving like prey," one architect observed. "They're behaving like predators who have been awakened from sleep." "Should we warn the Vethkai?" another asked. The first architect considered this question for a long moment. No, the Vethkai chose to attack. They chose to ignore our warnings about humanity. Now they will learn why we gave those warnings. If the humans win, then the galaxy will have new rulers to respect. And perhaps that will not be a bad thing. Back on Earth, Commander Lyra Chen received her new orders. She would lead the first strike against Vethkai's space. Her mission was simple: find their weakest queen world. Destroy it completely. Show the Dominion that humanity was coming. She gathered her crew and explained what they would face. Thousands of enemy ships, defensive platforms, an entire empire that wanted them dead. "We are not going there to win a battle," she told them. "We are going there to send a message. The message is simple. You hurt us. Now we hurt you back. And we will keep hurting you until you understand that humans are not prey." Her crew responded with a single word, shouted in unison: vengeance. The first ships of the Black Armada disappeared into hyperspace. The galaxy held its breath. The burning was about to begin. The Vethkai. Border patrols did not see the human ships coming. They were watching the wrong places. For 3,000 years, their enemies had always attacked from the edges of their territory, slowly pushing inward through defensive lines. That was how wars were fought. That was how wars had always been fought. Humanity did not care about how wars were supposed to be fought. Commander Lyra Chen brought her fleet out of hyperspace directly inside Vethkai territory. Her navigators had calculated the exact position of every sensor station, every patrol route, every defensive platform. They had found the blind spots, the gaps in coverage that the Vethkai had never bothered to fix. Why would they? No enemy had ever been foolish enough to try a deep strike. Until now. The Harbinger, Chen's flagship, led a force of 300 ships toward Vreth Prime. This was the oldest of the 12 queen worlds. Home to a breeding queen who had produced soldiers for over 2,000 years, its defenses were legendary. Its garrison numbered in the millions. None of that mattered. Chen's ships did not engage the garrison. They did not attack the defensive platforms. They flew past them at maximum speed, ignoring the confused fire that followed them. By the time the Vethkai commanders understood what was happening, the human fleet was already in orbit above Vreth Prime. The Genesis bombs fell like rain. Dr. Tanaka had designed these weapons specifically for this moment. They did not explode. They did not burn. Instead, they released clouds of engineered particles into the atmosphere. These particles bonded with specific elements in the air, changing the chemical composition of everything they touched within hours. The air of Vreth Prime became poison to Vethkai biology. Every breath burned their lungs. Every moment outside their sealed buildings brought them closer to death. The ancient queen, protected deep beneath the surface, felt her connection to her children weakening as millions of them collapsed. The Vethkai had two choices: evacuate or die. They evacuated. Massive transport ships lifted off from every city, carrying soldiers and workers and eggs that would never hatch. They fled to other worlds, other systems, anywhere that was safe. Behind them, they left a planet that would be uninhabitable for centuries. This was not war, as the galaxy knew it. This was something new, something terrifying across Vethkai space. The same scene repeated. Human fleets appeared without warning, bypassing defenses and striking directly at the queen worlds. They did not try to hold territory. They did not try to capture resources. They simply destroyed what the Vethkai needed to survive and moved on. The Dominion's fleet, the largest in the known galaxy, found itself chasing shadows. Every time they gathered enough ships to confront a human force, that force had already disappeared. Every time they set up defenses around a queen world, the humans attacked somewhere else. The Supreme Overmind watched its empire crumble and felt something it had never experienced before: Fear for queen worlds fell in the first week. Then 6. The Vethkai were losing breeding capacity faster than they could replace it. Their pheromone networks were being disrupted by human weapons that targeted the chemical signals directly. Soldiers who had fought as perfect units now stumbled around in confusion. Unable to coordinate with each other, the Galactic Concordat called an emergency session. Representatives from all 12 elder races gathered to discuss the crisis. What they saw on their screens shocked them to their core. Humanity was winning. Not slowly, not barely, but completely. The Vethkai Dominion, which had conquered 17 species, was being torn apart by a civilization they had dismissed as primitive and weak. "This is not possible," one representative said. "The humans were supposed to have 400 ships. Our intelligence shows over 2,000. Their weapons are unlike anything we have seen," another added. "They do not fight for territory. They fight to destroy the enemy's ability to exist." The architects remained silent through most of the discussion. They had predicted this outcome. They had seen the signs that other races had missed. Humanity had been preparing for this war for decades, hiding their strength behind a mask of peace. Finally, the eldest architect spoke. "What we are witnessing is not madness. It is not brutality. It is consequence. The humans offered peace. The Vethkai chose war. Now the humans are showing the galaxy what happens when you mistake their kindness for weakness. Should we intervene?" Someone asked, "Intervene how? On whose side?" The Vethkai attacked first. They killed millions of innocents. Under our own laws, humanity has the right to respond. But if they destroy the Dominion completely, they will become the new threat. The architect made a sound that might have been a sigh. Perhaps, or perhaps they will return to their farms and their colonies and their peaceful lives. We do not know what humans will do when this is over. We only know what they do when they are attacked. On the bridge of the Harbinger, Commander Chen received a message from Admiral Cole. New intelligence had arrived. The Vethkai were hiding something. Deep scans of one of their remaining worlds had detected unusual energy signatures, life signs. Human life signs. Chen read the report with growing horror. The 847 survivors of Elysium 7 were not the only ones who had escaped. Before the Vethkai destroyed the planet, they had sent ground forces to collect prisoners. Over 50,000 colonists had been captured and transported to processing facilities across Dominion space. They were alive. 50,000 men, women, and children from Elysium 7 held in stasis pods. Waiting to be sold as slaves, Chen immediately changed course. Her mission was no longer just about revenge. It was about rescue. She contacted Admiral Cole directly. "Sir, we have to get them out. Those are our people." Cole's response came back within minutes. "I know, Commander. I am sending additional forces to your position. You will have everything you need." "What about the original mission?" "The Queen Worlds. We continue both operations. We hit them hard enough that they cannot stop us from reaching the prisoners. This war is no longer just about making the Vethkai pay. It is about bringing our people home." The news spread through the human fleet. 50,000 survivors? Families that might be reunited. Children who might see their parents again. The soldiers who had fought for vengeance now found a new purpose. They fought for hope. The Vethkai received intelligence about the change in human tactics. They realized that the processing facility was now a target. Some advisors suggested using the prisoners as shields, threatening to kill them if humanity did not withdraw. The Supreme Overmind rejected this idea. Even in its fear, it understood something important. The humans were not fighting like normal enemies. They were not calculating costs and benefits. They were fighting with their hearts. Threatening their prisoners would only make them more dangerous. Instead, the Overmind ordered its remaining fleet to gather around the facility. If the humans wanted their people back, they would have to fight through the largest concentration of Vethkai ships ever assembled. "Commander." Chen received the intelligence update. She looked at the numbers. Over 3,000 enemy vessels protecting a single station. Her fleet had less than 500 ships. She smiled. "They think numbers will save them," she said to her crew. "They still do not understand. We are not fighting to win a battle. We are fighting for our family, and for our family, we will burn through anything. The final confrontation was approaching. The galaxy watched and waited to see how far humanity would go to bring their people home. The answer would change everything. 3 months had passed since Elysium 7 burned. In that time, the galaxy had witnessed something it never expected to see. The Vethkai Dominion, conquerors of 17 species, rulers of 1,000 worlds, was falling apart. 8 of the 12 queen worlds had been destroyed or abandoned. The Dominion's fleet had lost over 6,000 ships trying to catch human forces that refused to fight by the rules. Their economy was collapsing. Their soldiers were confused and demoralized. Their allies were quietly abandoning them. The Supreme Overmind knew it was losing. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Vethkai leader had to consider the unthinkable: surrender. The Overmind broadcast a message to humanity. Its voice echoed across space, reaching every human ship and station. People of Earth, we offer peace. We will return all prisoners taken from Elysium 7. We will pay compensation for your losses. We will withdraw from 3 sectors of space and promise never to attack human territory again. In exchange, you will end this war and allow the Dominion to survive. Many in the galaxy expected humanity to accept. The offer was generous. The Vethkai were giving up more than they had ever given to any enemy before. Surely the humans would see reason. Surely they would take this victory and go home. Admiral Marcus Cole stood before the cameras that would broadcast his response across the known universe. Behind him, holographic displays showed the faces of his officers, his soldiers, his people. All of them were watching. All of them were waiting. Supreme Overmind, Cole began, his voice calm and steady. You offer us peace. You offer us compensation. You offer us promises. Eh? He paused. We do not want your promises. We do not trust your words. 3 months ago, you sent your ships to Elysium 7 and killed 2,300,000 innocent people. You gave them no warning. You offered them no mercy. You treated them like animals to be slaughtered. His voice grew harder. Now you want peace? Now you want to negotiate? Now that you are losing, now that your empire is burning, now you remember that diplomacy exists? Cole stepped closer to the camera. His eyes held a fire that burned hotter than any weapon. Here are our terms. You will return every human prisoner. Every single one. You will surrender your entire fleet, every ship, every weapon, every soldier. You will dismantle all military facilities throughout your territory. And you will do this within 30 standard days. The Overmind's response came immediately, filled with outrage. These terms are impossible. You ask us to destroy ourselves. No, Cole replied. We ask you to survive without the ability to hurt anyone else. That is more mercy than you showed our people on Elysium 7. You have 30 days. If you refuse, we will continue until there is nothing left to refuse. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings sat in stunned silence. They had never heard anyone speak to the Vethkai this way. They had never imagined anyone could speak to the Vethkai this way. The Supreme Overmind rejected the terms. It called upon the Galactic Concordat to intervene, to restrain these violent humans before they destroyed the balance of power that had existed for thousands of years. The Concordat gathered to debate. Some elder races supported intervention. They argued that humanity was becoming too powerful, too dangerous. If the humans could destroy the Vethkai, what would stop them from destroying others? The architects spoke against intervention. The eldest among them rose and addressed the assembly. The Vethkai came to us many times over the centuries, asking us to ignore their conquests. They said it was their right to rule the weak. They said it was natural for the strong to dominate. We accepted their arguments. We looked away while they enslaved 17 species. The architect's voice grew cold. Now someone has proven stronger than the Vethkai. Now the conquered have become the conquerors. And suddenly, we are concerned about the balance of power? It made a sound of disgust. If we intervene now, we prove that we only care about rules when they protect those we favor. The humans have done nothing that the Vethkai have not done 1,000 times before. We will not stop them. The vote was close, but the architects won. The Concordat would not intervene. Commander Chen received this news aboard the Harbinger. She was preparing for the most important mission of her life, the rescue of the 50,000 prisoners. Her fleet had grown to 800 ships. Additional forces had arrived from every corner of human space, volunteers who wanted to be part of the rescue, ships that had been held in reserve, even civilian vessels that had been armed and armored for combat. The Vethkai had gathered 3,000 ships around the processing facility. They were daring humanity to attack. They believed that no force could break through such defenses. Chen studied the enemy formation for hours. She consulted with her officers. She ran simulations and calculated probabilities. The numbers were not good. Even with all her ships, even with all her weapons, a direct assault would cost too many lives. But then Dr. Tanaka arrived with a new idea. The Vethkai are expecting you to attack their ships, Tanaka explained. They are prepared for that, but they are not prepared for what I have created. She showed Chen a new weapon. It was called the Whisper. Unlike the Genesis bombs, which affected planets, the Whisper targeted pheromone communication directly. A single burst could disrupt coordination across an entire fleet. If we deploy this at the right moment, their ships will lose the ability to work together. They will still have weapons, but they will not be able to fight as a unit. It will be chaos. Chen looked at the weapon with new hope. How long do we have before they adapt? Perhaps 30 minutes? Maybe less. You will need to move fast. 30 minutes to break through 3,000 ships and rescue 50,000 people? I've done harder things. She gathered her fleet for a final briefing. Every captain, every pilot, every soldier listened as she explained the plan. When the Whisper activates, we do not stop. We do not engage unless we must. Our only goal is reaching that facility and getting our people out. Every second counts. Every ship matters. We fight together, we survive together, and we bring our family home together. The fleet moved into position. Chen took a deep breath and looked at the stars around her. Somewhere among those lights was the facility where 50,000 humans waited in frozen sleep, not knowing if anyone was coming for them. They thought they could take our people, and we would do nothing, Chen said quietly to herself. They thought we would count the cost and walk away. They do not understand. We will burn through the entire galaxy if we have to. We will never stop. We will never forget. And we will never leave our people behind. She gave the order. All ships, begin the assault. Today, we bring them home. The Whisper activated. The Vethkai fleet fell into confusion. 800 human ships charged into the heart of enemy territory. Carrying the hope of 50,000 souls and the fury of a species that had finally shown its true face, the galaxy watched in awe. The rescue had begun. The Whisper did its work perfectly. 3,000 Vethkai ships, once the most feared fleet in the galaxy, dissolved into chaos within seconds. Captains screamed orders that no one could follow. Gunners fired at targets their allies were already engaging. Ships collided with each other as their coordination fell apart completely. Commander Chen did not hesitate. Her fleet punched through the confused enemy lines like a knife through water. Ships fell around her, both human and Vethkai, but she did not stop. She could not stop. Not while 50,000 people waited in that facility ahead. The Harbinger took hit after hit. Its shields failed. Its armor cracked. But its engines still worked, and Chen pushed them harder than they were ever designed to go. She had promised to bring her people home. She would keep that promise or die trying. The facility appeared on our screens. A massive station, built to process slaves from conquered worlds. Inside those walls, 50,000 humans floated in stasis pods, frozen in time, waiting for a rescue that many had thought would never come. Chen's assault teams boarded the station from multiple points. They fought through corridors filled with confused Vethkai guards. They followed the maps that intelligence had provided, racing toward the storage chambers where the prisoners were kept. The first team reached the chambers and stopped in shock. Rows upon rows of pods stretched into the distance. each one containing a human face frozen in sleep. Men, women, children, families that had been torn apart on Elysium 7. Now, waiting in the darkness for someone to wake them. "Start the extraction," Chen ordered through the communication system. "Every pod, every person, we leave no one behind." The rescue ships arrived and began loading pods as fast as they could. Medical teams worked to stabilize those who had been in stasis too long. Engineers repaired damaged pods that might have killed their occupants if opened incorrectly. Outside, the battle continued. The Vethkai were recovering from the Whisper's effects. Their coordination was returning. More ships were arriving from other systems. Time was running out, and then something unexpected happened. A Vethkai commander named Vrethner had watched the humans throughout this entire war. He had seen them spare civilian transports that tried to flee. He had seen them accept surrendering soldiers instead of killing them. He had seen them rebuild infrastructure they had destroyed, ensuring that conquered populations would not starve. When the Supreme Overmind ordered him to destroy the facility and kill all the prisoners, Vrethner refused. "Humans are not monsters," he broadcast to his fleet. "They fight for their families. They show mercy to those who yield. We attacked them without cause, and they responded with force, but also with restraint." Other commanders heard his words. Some agreed, some did not. The Vethkai fleet split as ships began fighting each other, loyalists against those who had lost faith in the Overmind. Chen used this chaos to complete the evacuation. The last pod was loaded onto a rescue ship just as the facility's reactors began to fail. The human fleet withdrew, carrying 50,000 sleeping souls to safety. The Supreme Overmind, watching from its throne world, realized that everything was lost. Its fleet was divided. Its empire was shattered. Its own commanders were turning against it. When human forces finally reached its palace, they found the Overmind dead in its chamber. It had chosen to end its own life rather than face capture. No one mourned its passing. The war was over. The galaxy waited to see what humanity would do next. Many expected them to claim Vethkai space, to build an empire on the ashes of their defeated enemy. Some feared that humans would become the new conquerors. Worse than the Vethkai had ever been? They were wrong. Admiral Marcus Cole stood before the Galactic Concordat 6 months after the attack on Elysium 7. The elder races looked at him with a mixture of respect and fear. This human had commanded a war that changed everything. What would he demand now? Cole spoke quietly, his voice carrying through the great chamber. "We did not want this war. We did not seek revenge. But when our people were attacked, when our children were killed and our families were taken, we could not remain silent. We showed the galaxy that humanity is not prey." He paused and looked at each representative in turn. "Now the war is over. The Vethkai dominion has fallen. We could claim their worlds. We could build an empire. We could become the very thing we fought against." The chamber was completely silent. "We will not do that. We ask for nothing except what was always ours. The right to exist without being prey. The right to live in peace without fear of attack. The right to be treated as equals in this galaxy." He stepped forward, his eyes hard, but his voice gentle. "We showed you what happens when someone hurts our family. Now let us show you something else. We showed mercy to those who surrendered. We helped civilians escape from war zones. We rebuilt what we destroyed. We are not monsters. We never wanted to be monsters. We simply refused to be victims." Cole straightened his shoulders. "Let this be the lesson the galaxy never forgets. Humanity offers friendship to those who approach in peace. We offer trade, cooperation, and partnership. But we will never again allow anyone to attack our people without consequence. Remember Elysium 7. Remember what we did when our home burned. And remember that we chose to stop when we could have continued forever." He turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the elder races sat in stunned silence. 50 years later, the planet Elysium 7 had been transformed again. New terraforming technology had restored its atmosphere. New colonists had built new cities among rebuilt silver forests. Life had returned to the world that had once been nothing but Ashdod, In the center of the first settlement stood a memorial, a wall of black stone carved with 2,300,000 names. Every person who had died on that terrible day, every soul that humanity had lost. Children from many different species came to visit this memorial on school trips. Among them were young Vethkai, born after the war, raised in a galaxy where their people and humans had learned to live together. They were taught about what their ancestors had done and why it was wrong. They were taught about the humans who had shown mercy when they could have shown only destruction. One young Vethkai approached an elderly human woman who served as a guide at the memorial. The woman had deep lines on her face and gray hair that had once been black. She moved slowly, but her eyes were still sharp. "Why did you not destroy us completely?" the young Vethkai asked. "You had the power. You had the reason. Why did you stop?" The woman smiled sadly. She had been one of the 847 original survivors. She had lost her entire family on this world. She had spent 50 years living with that grief. "Yes, destroying you would have made us like you," she said gently. "We had already lost so much. If we had given in to hatred completely, we would have lost ourselves as well, and that would have been the greatest defeat of all." She looked up at the sky, where human and Vethkai ships patrolled together. "Your people taught us how strong we could be when we needed to fight, but we taught ourselves how strong we could be when we chose to forgive. That is the lesson we hope the galaxy remembers. Not just what we did in war, but what we chose to do when the war was over." The young Vethkai looked at the memorial, at all those names carved in stone, and understood. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. Not through conquest, but through something more powerful. Through the choice to remain human. Even after everything they had suffered, the stars continued to shine above Elysium 7. And in those stars, a new era had begun. An era where humanity stood as equals among the elder races. An era where the galaxy remembered both the fire of human vengeance and the warmth of human mercy. An era of peace. Built on the ashes of war, and humanity watched over it all. Forever vigilant, forever hopeful, forever ready to protect what they loved.